Ambassador Sarah Chun walked into the council chambers for what she knew would be the last time. Her black shoes clicked on the polished floor, made from some alien crystal that cost more than most human cities. The sound echoed in the huge room, making her feel small. That was the point, she knew. Everything about this place was designed to make visiting species feel small and unimportant. The chamber was shaped like a giant bowl, with seats rising up in circles around a central speaking area. Hundreds of alien delegates sat in those seats, representing species from across the galaxy. Some looked like giant insects with too many eyes. Others were tall and thin like walking trees. A few seemed to be made of living metal that shifted and changed as they moved. Sarah had been coming to these meetings for 3 years now. 3 long years of asking nicely, filling out forms, and paying fees that kept getting bigger. All for the right to mine asteroids in a system that humans had discovered. A system that no one else had even known existed until human ships found it. She carried a thick folder under her arm. Inside were reports, studies, and documents that had taken Earth's best scientists 2 years to complete. Environmental impact studies showing that mining the asteroids would not hurt any planets. Cultural surveys proving that no intelligent life lived in the system. Safety reports demonstrating that human mining would not create any dangers. And of course, the payment receipts. So many payment receipts that the Galactic Council loved its fees. There was a fee to submit a request, a fee to have the request reviewed, a fee to present the request in person, a fee for translating documents into the 17 official council languages, a fee for storing the documents in the council archives. There were even fees for paying the other fees. Sarah took her place at the small podium in the center of the chamber. Above her, hundreds of alien eyes stared down. Some looked bored. Others seemed annoyed that they had to waste time on such a minor matter. A few appeared to be sleeping, though it was hard to tell with some of the more unusual species. The council speaker was a Zephyrian named Valtar. His people looked like walking crystals, tall and angular, with light dancing inside their translucent bodies. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. It would have been beautiful if Sarah did not know how ugly his words would be. The council recognizes Ambassador Chun of the human species, Valtar announced. You may present your final proposal regarding mining rights in the system. You call Kepler 442. Sarah opened her folder and began to speak. She had practiced this speech many times, but her voice still felt tight with controlled anger. Honored delegates, 3 years ago, human explorers discovered a system containing 17 asteroid belts rich in rare minerals. These asteroids contain elements that could power clean energy for thousands of worlds. Elements that could help feed billions of hungry people across the galaxy. Elements that could make space travel safer and cheaper for everyone. She paused, looking up at the sea of alien faces. A few seemed to be paying attention now. We have spent 3 years following every council protocol. We have completed every required study. We have paid every demanded fee. Our proposal is simple and fair. We ask for the right to mine the asteroids we discovered in the system we found, using our own ships and our own workers. In return, we offer to sell these materials to all council members at cost price. No profit, just enough to cover our expenses. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some delegates seemed surprised by the generous offer. Others looked suspicious, as if they could not believe humans would make such a deal. The Zephyrian trade minister, Crystal, rose from his seat. Light pulsed angrily through his crystal body as he spoke. The council has reviewed this proposal and finds it unacceptable. The humans are clearly too primitive to safely extract such valuable materials. Their technology is crude and dangerous. Their safety standards are below galactic minimums. Most importantly, They lack the experience to handle resources of such importance to galactic stability. Sarah felt her jaw clench. Human mining technology was actually more advanced than most council species. Human safety standards were stricter than the galactic requirements. And humans had been successfully mining asteroids for over a century. Crystal continued, his voice growing more condescending with each word. However, the Council is not unreasonable. We understand that humans have invested time and effort in this discovery. Therefore, we are prepared to offer the human species a 15% share in the mining operation. 15%? Sarah asked, her voice carefully controlled. Of the system we discovered? Yes, a very generous offer, considering your species' limitations. The remaining 85% will be managed by experienced council mining corporations. This arrangement ensures proper safety standards and fair distribution of resources. Throughout the galaxy, Sarah stared at him for a long moment. 15% of their own discovery. After 3 years of jumping through hoops and paying endless fees, an Altarian delegate named Thor Schul spoke up. His people looked like giant centipedes with too many arms, and his voice buzzed like an angry insect. The humans should be grateful for any consideration at all. Most primitive species wait centuries before being granted any mining rights. 15% is quite generous for a species that only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. More murmurs rippled through the chamber, but now they sounded approving. Other delegates nodded their various heads, tentacles, and sensory organs. 15% was indeed generous by council standards. After all, what could humans do if they refused? Sarah closed her folder slowly. The sound seemed very loud in the sudden quiet of the chamber. She had expected this, of course. The council always did this. They let smaller species do the dangerous work of exploration and discovery, then swooped in to claim most of the rewards. It was how they had built their power over thousands of years, but something was different this time. Sarah was not begging or pleading or offering to negotiate further. Instead, she was smiling. Not a happy smile, but the kind of smile that worried people who knew humans well. "Thank you for clarifying the council's position," she said, her voice calm and clear. "The United Earth Federation has heard your offer and considered it carefully." She picked up her folder and stood straighter, looking up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at her. "We decline." The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates chittered, buzzed, hummed, and made sounds that had no human equivalent. Veltar banged his crystal gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. "Ambassador Chun," he said when the noise finally died down, "perhaps you did not understand the offer. 15% is quite generous. Perhaps you would like more time to consider?" "No, thank you," Sarah replied politely. "We understand perfectly. The Council wants 85% of our discovery in exchange for permission to mine our own find. We have decided that this arrangement does not serve human interests." Kristhal's light pulsed brighter with anger. "Then what exactly do you propose?" "The Council has made its decision. These terms are final." Sarah smiled again, and this time it was definitely the kind of smile that made smart people nervous. "We propose nothing," she said simply. "The United Earth Federation formally withdraws from these negotiations. We also withdraw our application for mining rights in the Kepler 442 system." The chamber fell completely silent. This had never happened before. Species always accepted whatever terms the Council offered, eventually. They had to. Where else could they go? "Furthermore," Sarah continued, "we withdraw our offer to sell extracted materials to Council members at cost. We thank the Council for its time and for helping us understand our position in galactic affairs." She turned and walked toward the exit, her security team falling into step behind her. Her footsteps echoed in the silent chamber, each click sounding like a small explosion. "Ambassador," Veltar called after her. "Where are you going? You cannot simply leave. The council has not dismissed you." Sarah paused at the chamber doors and looked back over her shoulder. The smile was gone now, replaced by an expression of polite indifference. "We are returning to human space," she said. "Thank you for making our decision so easy." The doors closed behind her with a soft hiss, leaving several hundred of the galaxy's most powerful beings staring at empty air and wondering what had just happened. In the corridor outside, Sarah's deputy ambassador jogged to catch up with her quick stride. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "what happens now?" Sarah's smile returned, but this time it was genuine and warm. "Now, David, we show them what humans do when diplomacy fails." Behind them, the emergency alarms began to sound as the council called its first crisis session in over 200 years. They had no idea that it would not be their last. 6 months after Ambassador Chun walked out of the council chambers, strange reports began reaching the Galactic Trade Authority. Ships were detecting unusual energy readings from the Tau Ceti system, a region of space that most civilized species considered worthless. The system contained nothing but asteroids, gas clouds, and empty space. No planets worth claiming, no resources worth mining, no strategic value whatsoever. At least, that was what everyone had believed. Trade Minister Vexaha of the Andromedan Commercial Guild was the first to investigate the reports seriously. Her people were traders by nature, always looking for new opportunities and unexplored markets. When her long-range sensors picked up massive energy signatures from Tau Ceti, she decided to take a closer look. What she found changed everything. The empty system was no longer empty. Huge space stations floated among the asteroids, their hulls gleaming with fresh construction. Mining platforms worked steadily on rocks that sensors had dismissed as worthless for centuries. Most shocking of all, the stations were human-built, and they were enormous. Vexa ordered her ship closer, trying to understand what she was seeing. The largest station was bigger than most council worlds, a sprawling complex of docks, factories, and living areas that could house millions of beings. Smaller stations dotted the system like cities in space, connected by streams of traffic that moved with purpose and efficiency. Her communications officer received a polite message from the largest station inviting her to dock and trade. The voice that delivered the message was human, speaking perfect Andromedan with the kind of accent that came from years of practice. Dr. Elena Vasquez met Vexaha at the docking bay of New Geneva Station. Elena was a small human woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but Vexaha could see the sharp intelligence behind her friendly smile. She wore simple work clothes instead of the fancy robes that most officials preferred. "Welcome to New Geneva Station," Elena said warmly. "I am Dr. Vasquez, Director of Human Colonial Development. We are honored to receive our first Andromedan visitor." Vexaha looked around the docking bay with amazement. The space was huge and clean, filled with ships from species she recognized and some she did not. Human workers moved efficiently among the vessels, loading and unloading cargo with advanced machinery that operated almost silently. "This is impossible," Vexaha said, her translator struggling with her shocked tone. "Our surveys showed this system was empty. Worthless rocks and gas clouds. When did humans build all this?" Elena smiled. "We have been developing this region for almost 30 years. Would you like a tour? I think you will find our operation quite interesting." As they walked through the station, Elena explained what humans had been doing while the council argued about mining rights in distant systems. Decades ago, human scientists had discovered that certain types of asteroids contained resources that standard sensors could not detect. These rocks looked worthless from the outside, but their cores held some of the most valuable materials in the galaxy. The Council had never bothered to survey systems like Tau Ceti properly. They were too focused on the obvious prizes, the planets, and moons that sparkled with surface deposits. They never looked twice at empty space, filled with nothing but floating rocks. Humans, however, had looked very carefully indeed. We call it quantum crystalline extraction, Elena explained as they entered the observation deck overlooking the mining operations. The crystals form deep inside asteroids under very specific conditions. They are invisible to normal sensors, but they contain enormous amounts of energy in very small packages. Through the transparent walls, Vaisel watched human mining ships work on asteroids that floated nearby. The ships used some kind of energy beam to slice into the rocks with perfect precision, extracting glowing crystals that pulsed with inner light. One crystal the size of your fist, Elena continued, contains enough energy to power a starship for a year, or run a city for a month, or charge the batteries of 1,000 personal vehicles. The applications are almost unlimited. Vexaha stared at the crystals being loaded into transport containers. Each one was worth more than her entire ship, and there were thousands of them. The humans had found a treasure beyond imagination, hiding in the rocks that everyone else had ignored. But the real breakthrough, Elena said, was learning to use the crystals to power new kinds of technology. Faster engines, better computers, more efficient life support systems. We have been very busy during our time away from Council space. They visited the trading floor next, where Vexaha saw something that made her tentacles curl with excitement. Dozens of species were conducting business with human traders, buying and selling goods in a marketplace that buzzed with activity. But these were not Council species. They were the outsiders, the independents, the peoples who had been pushed to the edges of galactic civilization. The Rigelian free traders were there, along with the Silicon Commune, the Nomad fleets, and many others that Vexaha recognized. These groups had always struggled to compete with Council corporations because they lacked access to the best technology and the richest trade routes. Now they were thriving. We offer fair prices and honest dealing, Elena explained. No fees for submitting trade proposals. No bribes to dock at our stations. No requirements to purchase expensive licenses or pay tribute to distant authorities. Just good business between equals. A Rigelian captain named Zixtel approached them, his scaled hide gleaming with health and prosperity. Vexaha had known Zixtel for years, and she had never seen him look so confident. Vexaha, he called out in his gravelly voice. What brings you to human space? Come to see what real trade looks like. The humans have been good to us, he explained. They buy our rare metals at market prices, not the discount rates the Council forces on us. They sell us fuel and supplies without making us wait months for approval. And their new engines. He gestured toward his ship, which looked somehow sleeker and more powerful than before. I can make the run from here to the outer rim in half the time it used to take. Vexa's mind raced with the implications. If humans were selling advanced technology to independent traders, those traders could compete directly with Council corporations. They could offer faster delivery, better prices, and more reliable service. The carefully controlled trade networks that kept the Council in power would begin to collapse. Elena led her to a quiet cafe where they could talk privately. The establishment was run by a being Vexaha did not recognize, something that looked like a cross between a plant and a crystal formation. It served drinks and food from dozens of different worlds, including some that Vexaha had never seen before. This is Tethra, Elena said, introducing the cafe owner. Their people were driven from their homeworld by Council taxation policies. They found refuge here and have built a new life. Their cuisine is becoming quite popular throughout the system. Tethra communicated through shifting patterns of colored light that ran across their crystalline surface. Elena had some kind of translation device that converted the lights into words. Tethra says that human space is the first place their people have felt safe in generations. Alina translated. No one demands impossible fees or threatens to seize their property for invented violations. They can simply live and work in peace. As they drank their alien beverages, Elena shared more details about human activities during their absence from council politics. While diplomats had spent years arguing about mining rights, human engineers had been revolutionizing space travel. While council species fought over trade routes, humans had been building new ones. We learned something important during our time in council chambers, Elena said. The system is designed to keep power concentrated in the hands of a few old species. Newer civilizations are supposed to accept whatever scraps they are given and be grateful for the privilege. She paused to sip her drink, a dark liquid that smelled like flowers and electricity. But humans have never been very good at accepting what other people think we deserve. So we decided to build something better. Vexaha leaned forward, fascinated. Despite herself, better how? No complicated bureaucracy. No endless fees and requirements. No distinction between old species and new ones. Everyone trades freely based on the value of what they offer. Everyone gets protection from those who would exploit them. Everyone has a voice in decisions that affect them. It sounded impossible. To Vexaha, the galaxy had always been dominated by the strong preying on the weak. The council maintained order by ensuring that power remained in the right hands. The idea that hundreds of species could cooperate as equals seemed like a beautiful dream that could never survive contact with reality, but she was seeing it work with her own eyes. How many species have joined you? She asked. Elena smiled mysteriously. More than you might expect. Fewer than we hope for eventually. Change takes time, but it is happening faster than we anticipated. When Vexaha finally returned to her ship, her cargo holds were full of quantum crystals, purchased at prices far below council rates. Her crew was excited about the new engine upgrades they had been offered, and her mind was spinning with the possibilities. She had come to Tau, Seti expecting to find a minor human operation mining worthless rocks. Instead, she had discovered that humans were building a new kind of galactic civilization. Supreme Chancellor Kethvar had not slept in 3 days. His tentacles writhed nervously as he reviewed the latest reports flooding into his office on the council homeworld. Each report brought worse news than the last, and the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. The humans were destroying everything, not with weapons or armies, but with something far more dangerous: success. Their alternative to council rule was working so well that species throughout the galaxy are starting to ask uncomfortable questions about why they needed the council at all. Kethvar's people, the hegemony, had ruled the galactic government for 800 years. They were masters of bureaucracy, experts at maintaining control through complicated rules and endless procedures. They understood how to keep power by making everyone else dependent on their systems, but they had never faced anything like this. His aide, a nervous young hegemony named Pulsax, entered the office carrying another stack of reports. His tentacles shook as he placed them on the already overflowing desk. Chancellor, the emergency session has been called. All member species are sending representatives. The hall is already full, and more ships are arriving every hour. Kethvar picked up the latest intelligence summary with one tentacle while continuing to read shipping reports with another. The ability to multitask had always been an advantage for his species, but today it felt like a curse. Every piece of information he processed made the situation worse. What is the current count on species? Threatening withdrawal? He asked without looking up. 17 have made formal protests. 5 have suspended their council membership pending investigation of their complaints. 3 are demanding immediate reforms, or they will leave entirely. Kethvar's main tentacle curled into a knot of frustration. 30 years ago, No species would have dared make such demands. The Council controlled too much of the galaxy's infrastructure. Trade routes, communication networks, defense systems, currency exchanges. Everything ran through. Council managed systems that made independence impossible. Or, so they had believed. The first sign of trouble had come 6 months ago when trade. Volumes through Council-controlled jump gates began declining. Not dramatically at first, just a small drop that could be explained by normal economic fluctuations. But the decline had continued and accelerated until it was impossible to ignore. Ships were finding other ways to travel between star systems. Ways that did not require expensive Council permits or route fees. Then came the reports about human space expanding. Not through conquest or annexation, but through voluntary alliance. Species were asking to join human territory, bringing their resources and populations with them. The humans accepted them all, apparently without demanding the tribute payments or loyalty oaths that the Council required. Most disturbing of all were the refugees. Beings who had lived under Council rule for generations were abandoning their homes to seek new lives in human space. They claimed they were tired of corruption, endless fees, and regulations that served no purpose except to maintain control. The final blow had come just days ago when humans released a complete archive of diplomatic communications covering the past 50 years. Messages between Council officials discussing how to exploit newer species. Plans for keeping certain worlds poor and dependent. Strategies for preventing emerging civilizations from developing too quickly. Everything was there, presented in clear language that any species could understand. The humans had been recording every conversation, saving every document, building a case against the Council that was impossible to deny. Polsax cleared his throat nervously. Chancellor, there is one more thing. The Centauri Rebellion has officially declared independence. They are requesting admission to the Human Alliance. Kethver's tentacles went completely still. The Centauri system was one of the Council's oldest and most loyal members. If they were abandoning the government they had helped create, the situation was worse than he had feared. How many systems are we talking about? 47 star systems, including 3 major industrial worlds and the primary food production centers for this sector. They control the shipping lanes between here and the Outer Rim territories. Without the Centauri systems, trade in that entire region would become almost impossible. The Council would lose access to crucial resources and find themselves cut off from nearly a quarter of their former territory. And they are just giving all of that to the humans? Not giving, Chancellor. According to their statement, they are joining as equal partners in something called the Terran Commonwealth. They will retain control of their internal affairs, while cooperating on trade, defense, and exploration. Kethver had studied the human political model, trying to understand how it worked. Instead of the top-down control that the Council used, humans seemed to prefer cooperation between independent groups. They made decisions through discussion and compromise rather than orders from above. It should not have worked. That kind of system should have collapsed into chaos within months. But somehow, it was functioning better than the Council's carefully managed bureaucracy. The emergency session was held in the Grand Assembly Hall, a massive chamber designed to hold representatives from every member species in the galaxy. Today, however, many of the seats were empty. Some species had sent no one at all, while others had reduced their delegations or sent junior officials instead of their usual senior representatives. The message was clear. The Council was no longer considered important enough to deserve their best attention. Kethver took his position at the central podium and looked out over the assembled delegates. The faces that looked back at him ranged from worried to angry to openly hostile. Many were species that had been among the Council's strongest supporters just months ago. Fellow beings, he began, his voice amplified throughout the hall. We face a crisis that threatens the stability of our galactic civilization. A group of primitive upstarts has declared war on everything we have built together over thousands of years. A murmur ran through the chamber, but it did not sound like agreement. Several delegates exchanged glances that suggested they saw the situation differently. Trade Minister Velkar of the Zephyrian Confederacy rose from his seat, light pulsing with agitation through his crystal body. With respect, Chancellor, the humans have not declared war on anyone. They have simply offered an alternative to Council membership, an alternative that many species are finding attractive, because they do not understand the consequences. Kethver snapped. The humans promise freedom and prosperity, but what happens when their primitive technology fails? What happens when their inexperienced leadership makes mistakes that cost billions of lives? What happens when they discover that governing a galaxy is more difficult than mining asteroids? Defense Minister Quantal spoke up from her position near the back of the chamber. Her people, the warrior caste of Rigel Prime, had always been among the Council's most reliable supporters. If she was having doubts, the situation was truly desperate. Chancellor, our intelligence reports suggest that human technology is far from primitive. Their ships are faster than ours. Their manufacturing is more efficient. Their communication networks are more secure. And their military capabilities, double quotes. She paused, her scarred face grim. Our analysts believe they could defeat any council fleet without significant losses. The chamber erupted in noise as delegates began shouting questions and protests. How had humans developed such advanced technology without anyone noticing? Why had Council intelligence failed so completely? What did this mean for their own security? Kethvar raised his tentacles for silence, but it took several minutes for the noise to die down. When he could finally speak again, his voice was strained with barely controlled panic. Even if the humans have developed new technologies, they cannot simply ignore the established order of galactic civilization. There are laws, treaties, agreements that have kept peace for centuries. They cannot unilaterally decide to create their own system outside of recognized authority. Ambassador Tyshel of the Independent Mining Guild stood slowly. She was an old being, ancient even by the standards of her long-lived species, and her voice carried the weight of centuries of experience. Honored Chancellor, she said carefully, perhaps the problem is not that humans are ignoring established law. Perhaps the problem is that established law no longer serves the beings it claims to protect. She gestured toward the empty seats. Around her, half the species in this chamber have reduced their participation in council affairs. Trade through our controlled routes has dropped by 60%. Member species are leaving or threatening to leave. At what point do we admit that our system is failing? The system is not failing, Kethver protested. It is being undermined by irresponsible promises from a species that does not understand the complexities of galactic governance. Then perhaps, Tyshel continued calmly, we should ask ourselves why so many species find those promises more attractive than our proven methods. Another delegate rose, then another. One by one, they began listing their grievances against council rule, excessive fees that drained planetary economies, regulations that served no purpose except to create work for bureaucrats, trade restrictions that protected council corporations at the expense of everyone else. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the UHFV Indomitable and watched as space itself seemed to bend around his ship. The quantum slip space drive was humanity's greatest secret, a technology that made the Council's jump gate network look like ancient history, where Council ships needed expensive gates to travel between star systems. Human vessels could appear anywhere in the galaxy with nothing but empty space around them. Today, that technology would change everything. Admiral, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park from the navigation station, we are approaching the edge of Council territory. The escort fleet is maintaining formation behind us. Marcus looked at the tactical display, showing the ships that FOLOWED Indomitable through the strange non-space of quantum slip. 47 different species were represented in that fleet, each flying under the banner of the Free Galactic Alliance. Some were refugees fleeing Council oppression. Others were independent traders seeking new opportunities. A few were former Council species that had grown tired of serving an empire that no longer served them. All of them had chosen to stand with humanity against the oldest government in the galaxy. Communications, Marcus ordered. Open a channel to all ships in the fleet. The main screen flickered to life, showing the faces of dozens of different species. There was Captain Vexaha of the Andromedan Commercial Guild, her tentacles bright with excitement. Commander Zixtal of the Regellian Free Traders, his scaled hide gleaming with confidence. Admiral Tyshul of the Independent Mining Guild, her ancient eyes sharp with determination. They were rebels and outcasts, pirates and merchants, scientists and explorers. 6 months ago, they had been scattered across the galaxy with nothing in common except their dissatisfaction with Council rule. Now they were a fleet, united by a shared vision of what galactic civilization could become. Friends and allies, Marcus began, his voice carrying to every ship in the formation. Today, we escort the final convoy of refugees from Council space to freedom in Alliance territory. This marks the end of the evacuation phase of our operation, and the beginning of something new. He paused, looking at the faces on his screen. These beings had risked everything to join the human cause. They deserved to know what they were really fighting for. The Council has declared our alliance illegal. They have branded us as terrorists and pirates. They have threatened to destroy any world that gives us aid. But they have also shown us something important. They are afraid. For the first time in centuries, the Council faces an opponent they cannot control through bureaucracy or intimidate through threats. The fleet emerged from quantum slipspace at the coordinates Marcus had chosen carefully. They were at the edge of Council territory, in a system that had been disputed for decades. According to Council law, this was their space. According to Alliance principles, space belonged to whoever could make the best use of it. Today, they would find out which philosophy was stronger. Admiral, Lieutenant Park reported, Council ships are approaching. Long-range sensors show a full battle fleet led by the dreadnought Eternal Dominion. Marcus nodded calmly. He had expected this. Response: the Council could not allow the Alliance to operate freely in their territory without responding. Their entire system of control depended on the belief that they were the strongest force in the galaxy. Signal the fleet to maintain formation, but do not take aggressive action. This is still an escort mission, not a military operation. The Council fleet was impressive by traditional standards. 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, and the massive dreadnought that served as flagship for the hegemony navy. Their ships were large and heavily armed, designed to intimidate potential enemies and project power across vast distances. Were also slow, predictable, and dependent on technologies that humans had surpassed decades ago. Admiral Korth Axe of the hegemony navy appeared on Marcus's communication screen, his tentacles writhing with barely controlled rage. Behind him, the bridge of Eternal Dominion buzzed with activity as his crew prepared for battle. Human Admiral, Korth Axe began, his voice distorted by the translation system. You are in violation of Council territory. You will order your ships to surrender immediately, or we will open fire. Marcus studied his opponent for a moment. Korth Axe was a veteran officer who had served the Council faithfully for over 2 centuries. He was brave, competent, and completely unable to understand what he was really facing. Admiral Korth Axe, Marcus replied politely, we are conducting a humanitarian escort mission. The ships behind us carry refugees who are leaving Council territory voluntarily. We will defend them if necessary, but we have no desire for conflict. Those ships carry stolen Council resources and citizens who are fleeing their legal obligations. They will return to Council custody immediately. I am afraid that is not possible. These beings have requested asylum in Alliance territory, and we have granted it. They are under our protection now. Korthak's tentacles curled into aggressive knots. Then you have chosen war. The Council will not allow terrorist organizations to operate in civilized space. The communication ended, and Marcus watched as the Council fleet moved into attack formation. They were following standard tactics from their military manual, creating overlapping fields of fire that would trap enemy ships in a deadly crossfire dot. It would have worked against any conventional fleet. All ships, Marcus broadcast to his formation, implement Protocol 7. Defensive actions only unless directly fired upon. Protocol 7 was a tactical maneuver that the Alliance had developed specifically for situations like this. Instead of fighting the Council fleet directly, they would simply avoid engagement entirely. The quantum slipspace drives activated simultaneously across the Alliance fleet. To the Council sensors, it looked like the ships were simply vanishing from space. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, leaving empty space where a massive fleet had been. Korthax stared at his tactical display in confusion as his targets disappeared. His weapons officer reported that they were detecting quantum signatures, but the readings made no sense. According to their instruments, the human ships had moved outside normal space-time entirely. Where did they go? He demanded. Unknown, sir. Our sensors show quantum distortions, but the ships are not showing up on any known tracking methods. The answer came 30 seconds later when the Alliance fleet reappeared behind the Council formation. They had used quantum slipspace to move instantly from one position to another, bypassing the Council's careful trap entirely. Marcus opened communications again, his voice calm and professional. Admiral Korthax, as you can see, we have capabilities that your intelligence reports may not have included. We could have appeared directly next to your ships, or inside your formation, or anywhere else we chose. Instead, we chose to demonstrate that this conflict is unnecessary. Korthax turned his ship to face the new threat, but the humans had already moved again. This time, they appeared above the Council fleet, in a position that would allow them to attack the vulnerable upper sections of the enemy ships. This is impossible, Korthax muttered, watching his tactical display show enemy ships appearing and disappearing at will. How are they doing this? His science officer spoke up hesitantly. Sir, the quantum signatures suggest they are using some form of localized space-time manipulation. Our theoretical physics teams have speculated about such technology, but we believed it was centuries away from practical application. Admiral, Marcus's voice came over the communication system again. We could continue this demonstration, but I believe we have made our point. Your fleet is powerful by conventional standards, but it cannot effectively engage an enemy that can control its position in space-time. We suggest you return to Council territory and report that the Alliance convoy has safely reached its destination. Korthax stared at the tactical display showing human ships positioned all around his formation. They had complete tactical superiority and could have destroyed his entire fleet without taking a single casualty. Yet they were offering him the chance to withdraw with honor intact. That it was not how warfare was supposed to work. This is not over, he said finally. The Council will not accept this humiliation. There is no humiliation in recognizing when a situation has changed, Marcus replied. The galaxy is big enough for multiple approaches to civilization. The Council is welcome to continue governing those species that prefer their methods. We ask only that they respect the right of others to choose differently. The Council fleet withdrew, but Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The demonstration had served its purpose, showing that the Alliance could not be defeated through conventional military action. But it had also made the conflict inevitable. The Council could not allow their authority to be challenged so openly without responding. Over the following weeks, the Council's response became clear. They imposed a complete blockade on any system that had joined the Alliance. They declared that any ship found trading with Alliance worlds would be seized as contraband. They began building new fleets with experimental weapons designed specifically to counter human technology, but their most desperate measure was also their most revealing. They declared a state of emergency and suspended the rights and protections that had been guaranteed to member species for centuries. The meeting room aboard the human diplomatic vessel New Horizons was much smaller than the Grand Council chambers where this story had begun. There were no soaring ceilings or crystal walls designed to make visitors feel small and unimportant. Instead, there was a simple conference table surrounded by comfortable chairs. With large windows showing the stars outside, President Elizabeth Santos of the Terran Commonwealth sat at one end of the table, reviewing documents on a small tablet. She was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and the kind of calm expression that came from years of dealing with difficult problems. Across from her sat the delegation that had once ruled most of the galaxy. Supreme Chancellor Kethfer looked much older than he had 6 months earlier. His tentacles moved slowly and without their usual confident gestures. The other council representatives seemed equally diminished, their proud bearing replaced by the careful posture of beings who had learned that their power was not as absolute as they had believed. The irony was not lost on anyone in the room. A year ago, Ambassador Sarah Chun had sat in council chambers asking politely for permission to mine asteroids that humans had discovered. Now the council was asking humans for permission to continue existing as a government. President Santos looked up from her tablet and smiled pleasantly. "Thank you all for coming. I know this must be difficult for you, so I appreciate your willingness to negotiate in good faith." Chancellor Kethfor's tentacles twitched nervously. "President Santos, we are here because the situation has become untenable. The Council cannot function effectively with so many member species choosing to leave our jurisdiction." "Of course," Santos replied. "Change is always challenging. Would you like some coffee? Or tea? We have beverages from several dozen worlds now, including some that I think you might enjoy." The offer of refreshments in the middle of what was essentially a surrender negotiation seemed to confuse the council delegation. They were used to formal ceremonies with rigid protocols, not casual conversations over drinks. "Thank you, no," Kethfer said stiffly. "We prefer to conduct business without distractions." Santos nodded and gestured for her aide to pour coffee for the human delegation only. The rich aroma filled the small room, making the atmosphere feel more like a business meeting than a diplomatic crisis. "Very well. I understand you have some concerns about the current state of galactic affairs. Perhaps you could explain what you hope to accomplish in these discussions." Trade Minister Krithil, a Zephyrian who had dismissed human proposals so arrogantly months earlier, spoke up with considerably less confidence than he had shown before. "The Council seeks to establish a framework for coexistence between our remaining territory and the new alliance that has formed around human space. We believe that cooperation between our governments would benefit all species involved." Santos tilted her head thoughtfully. "Cooperation is certainly possible. The Alliance has always been open to peaceful relationships with any government that respects the rights of its citizens and neighbors. But I am curious about something." She touched her tablet, and a holographic display appeared above the table showing a map of the galaxy. Large sections that had once been marked as Council territory were now colored in the blue of the Free Galactic Alliance. 6 months ago, you controlled roughly 70% of known space. Today, that number is closer to 20%. Most of your former member species have chosen to join the Alliance or declare independence. What exactly do you have left to offer as a basis for cooperation? A question hung in the air like a challenge. Kethver's tentacles curled defensively as he struggled to find an answer that did not sound like begging. The Council still governs billions of beings across hundreds of star systems. Our experience in galactic administration spans thousands of years. Surely that knowledge has value, even in a changed political landscape. Absolutely, Santos agreed. Experience is always valuable. The question is whether that experience can be adapted to new circumstances. She touched her tablet again, and the display changed to show economic data. Trade volumes, resource production, population movements, all trending in directions that clearly favored Alliance territory over Council space. According to our analysis, most of the remaining Council territory consists of worlds that are economically dependent on the central government. Without the tribute payments and forced trade that your system required, many of these worlds are struggling to maintain their standard of living. Defense Minister Quantal leaned forward, her scarred face grim. That is precisely why we need to find a solution. If the Council collapses entirely, those worlds will face economic disaster. Billions of beings could suffer. Santos nodded sympathetically. You are absolutely right. That is why the Alliance is prepared to offer full membership to any world that wishes to join us. We have refugee assistance programs, economic development packages, and transition support for governments that want to adopt more democratic systems. And what about worlds that prefer to remain under Council authority? Kethver asked. They are welcome to do so, as long as the Council operates according to certain basic principles. Santos touched her tablet once more, and a document appeared. On the display, freedom of movement for citizens who wish to leave. No forced tribute or taxation without representation. Open trade with Alliance worlds. Respect for basic rights and dignity of all species. Crystal's crystalline body flickered with agitation. Those conditions would fundamentally change how the Council operates. We cannot maintain order and stability if citizens are free to leave whenever they disagree with government policy. Perhaps, Santos suggested gently, the goal should be to govern in a way that makes people want to stay rather than preventing them from leaving. The Council delegation fell silent, struggling with concepts that challenged everything they had believed about how power should work. For thousands of years, they had maintained control by making independence impossible. The idea of earning loyalty through good governance rather than demanding it through force was completely foreign to them. Admiral Korvax, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. President Santos, we understand that humans have developed superior technology and military capabilities. But surely you recognize that sudden changes in galactic order could create chaos and instability. Perhaps a gradual transition would be preferable to the current rapid transformation. Santos smiled, but there was steel behind her pleasant expression. Admiral, the transformation is only rapid from your perspective. Humans have been building the Alliance for 30 years. We gave the Council multiple opportunities to reform their practices and treat all species fairly. When diplomacy failed, we simply stopped participating in your system and built our own. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. The chaos and instability you are worried about already happened. It happened when the Council chose exploitation over cooperation. It happened when you treated newer species as sources of tribute rather than potential partners. It happened when you convinced yourselves that your way was the only way. Turning back to face the delegation, she continued, what you are seeing now is not chaos. It is the galaxy healing itself and building something better. Kethver's tentacles drooped with exhaustion and defeat. Then what do you propose? What role, if any, does the Council have in this new galactic order? Santos returned to her seat and leaned forward, her expression becoming more serious. That depends entirely on what you choose to do going forward. The Alliance is not interested in destroying the Council or punishing its leaders for past mistakes. We are interested in building a galaxy where all species can prosper according to their own values and preferences. She pulled up another document on her tablet. We are prepared to offer the Council Associate membership in the Alliance. This would allow you to maintain autonomy over your internal affairs while participating in the broader galactic community as an equal partner rather than a dominant authority. Associate membership? Crystal asked suspiciously. What would that entail? Full trading rights with Alliance worlds, access to our communication and transportation networks, participation in joint scientific and exploration projects, protection under Alliance mutual defense agreements. In exchange, you would need to adopt basic standards for citizen rights and agree to peaceful resolution of disputes. The terms were generous, far more so than the Council had ever offered to species seeking membership in their system. But they also represented a complete reversal of the galactic power structure. The Council would go from being the supreme authority to being just another member of a community of equals. And if we refuse? Quantal asked. Santos shrugged. Then you continue governing your remaining territory according to your current methods, and the Alliance continues growing as more species choose to join us. Eventually, you will either reform your practices to compete with what we offer, or you will find yourselves governing empty space as your last member's abandoned ship. She paused to sip her coffee, letting the implications sink in. The galaxy has changed, whether you accept it or not. The question is whether you want to be part of building something better, or whether you prefer to cling to something that no longer works.